This program is brought to you in part by SalCal Real Estate Connections.
Yes, welcome to Racing Action Today. We're here today with a very special guest who I'm sure you're going to recognize once I tell you his name. He's a race car mechanic, hot rod builder, classic car enthusiast, and all around great person, I have to say.
I don't know about great.
Joe Chambrello is in the house. And Joe, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And I know, you've been busy with all these things over the years. I mean, you were involved in racing with your daughter, Nikki, who I miss very much. I used to enjoy going there. And you build hot rods. I mean, you're involved in a lot of different things. But I got to ask you, how did this all start? Were you a kid building a soapbox derby cars in the backyard? How did this all start?
Well, I'd have to owe that to my dad. My dad was, he was the same thing. He built, he was a hot rod guy. He liked his cars, and, he taught me a lot about how to build things. And I broke a lot of stuff at the house. I remember taking apart blenders and making things out of the motors out of blenders. And my mom was completely impressed at what I did, but my dad would be mad because I broke the blender he wanted to keep in the house.
When you say that, I used to take apart the washing machine, the transmission, and my father used to go completely nuts.
Yeah.
That kind of brings me.
But it's fun.
It is.
It was fun.
It was, you're learning mechanics, right?
Oh yeah, definitely learning. That's kind of I got into it. I was born into it. My whole family. My brother raced, and my father raced at Plainville Stadium. He got kicked out of Plainville Stadium, but then my brother went to Stafford.
Now, what time frame did your father race there?
Probably around 70. I was there, so it had to be around 73-ish, 74.
Oh, wow.
1974. And he did the hobby stock.
Yeah.
They were street
back
cars.
then, I mean, you could afford to get into the sport, number one.
Yeah, my dad worked at the Newington Auto Parts, helped out there. My godfather owned it. And he, so it was really easy. Go back there, and he found an old Ford. I think it was a Ford Galaxy or something, and he primered it and put a number on the side. And let's go. Well, I think it was a pipe cage in there, And he said, "Let's go racing," and he did. But my dad didn't have the temperament. He would get mad. Where Pat was good. Pat had patience, and two-time champion, and at Stafford, and so that's. I mean, there was no way that I wasn't going to become mechanical with my family.
Oh, yeah. When you have a family, see, I was the opposite. In my family, I was the only one. My father was an avid golfer. That was his love. My mother was like, cooking, and I was the only one. I had two sisters that never got into that kind of thing.
Right.
But, as growing up, I mean, to this day, I could tell you fantastic stories about Hot Rod Club. And did you belong to a Hot Rod Club yourself?
Believe it or not, I didn't. And I liked too many of the clubs to just join one. I liked being I'm a people person, so I like to talk to everybody, and I learn from everybody. Yeah. And believe it or not, I really get along the best with the older generation. The older generation, when it comes to hot rodding and when it comes to, they did it in their backyard and they made everything. And
Well, they're old school.
that's,
I mean,
that's
everything,
impressive
old
stuff.
school was big. I mean, when you think back in the 1960s, the hot rods were not like they are today.
No,
I mean,
no. No, that's like my hot rod right now. I built that car so that if you were to build a time machine and you were to bring it back to 1965, it would fit right in, and everybody would go, oh, they'd walk right by it because it would look normal.
Yeah.
And that today, my latest saying that I've been saying a lot, and it can come across two ways, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But most people don't build their hot rods anymore. Most people assemble their hot rods. They're buying all the parts, put it together, and it's already pre-made. And that's what I tried not to do with my car, And even my street stock that Nikki, my daughter, raced. I never built one myself. My dad built a bunch of them. My brother and my dad. And unfortunately, I was young and I wasn't able to work on them. But I was able to put one together, and I had help with Eddie Flimke and Reggie Ruggiero, and they helped me out where I would get stuck or whatever. And I'll tell you what, nothing's better than doing it yourself, building it yourself.
Yeah, a lot of satisfaction, and just the fact to learn. I mean, it was interesting to learn something about how you do things, how you bend metal and weld
Get it all to work together. Yeah.
Now, as growing up in school, you went to high school, right?
Oh yeah, high school graduate.
Did you have any thoughts of college there, or no, back then?
No, I didn't. I'd never really thought about going to. I was mostly in. We used to call it power shop, automotive shop. We called it power back then, power shop and metal shop. And I remember getting called, to the power shop to fix things that were broken in there. Even in high school, people's cars would get broken, and I'd go down there and I'd be the one that kind of helped out to fix the things. It's kind of, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and my tree had a lot of apples on it, so I had no choice but to learn.
When you were young, though, before school, did you build go-karts and stuff?
Oh yeah, go-karts and mini bikes and bicycles, and I remember choppers, and put the forks, making, and that was, again, I was kind of spoiled because I remember everybody would take and they'd cut the forks off of one bike and they'd put it on another bike and they'd hammer them on and they'd go riding. And I had the luxury of having my dad, who was a welder. He was an iron worker. So I remember putting the pipes on there. When you turned, the bike would lift, and the geometry was all wrong. And I said to my dad, let's cut out of the frame. We moved the neck, and all of a sudden I got the bike that everybody wants to ride because it was, it was done kind of right. When you learn. So like I said, it was destined. It was, I had a mechanical brain from birth,
I could remember, the big bikes, and we would put skirts on them.
Yep. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, my dear.
Yep. Back then they had shifters on them too. They had those center shifters, and but it was a lot of fun to as a kid, because you're learning, and I'm addicted to the learning process. I actually, my wife will say sometimes, that I like to jump into new things all the time, and it's because I can't, once it becomes repetitive for me, I get bored. So I have to be learning, and so I get into something until I get pretty good at it, where it's automatic. And
you're interested to know how does it work?
Right.
Now tell me, did you ever learn how to weld?
Oh yeah, I was an iron worker. I actually I didn't go to college, but I did go. I was a union iron worker for Local 15. I did that from 1989-ish all the way until I ended up getting diagnosed with a heart valve issue. So iron working's a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting and all that. Yeah. So going back, I'm a certified welder. I actually had DOT papers. I could weld bridges, and I can weld.
Oh, wow.
So welding was kind of second nature for me too. And I did that for a long time. So I know how to build. I knew how to build bridges. I knew how to do rebar and Charter Oak Bridge. I did all the hand railing. If you walk across Charter Oak, I did all the hand railing. I did some of the cables on the Aragoni Bridge. I did all the post-tensioning beams under the Aragoni Bridge.
Ooh, wow.
Rentschler Field, I did the stands in Rentschler Field. Yeah. So I did, working for a long time. I was an iron worker, so taught me a lot.
That helped you though eventually with the cars, right?
Oh yeah. It all comes together because when you learn structural engineering and you learn it all works together.
Yes.
Some people try to they get confused, and I'm able to look at it and put it all together, and
Now, did you ever get involved with machinist work?
Very little. My dad got a Bridgeport, and we had a lathe.
Yep.
And I was able to learn the basics on it. I knew the basics. I was no machinist.
Yeah.
But Eddie down the shop with Raceworks I was lucky enough to when it come time to build like my coupe, I made a lot of parts down there. So I actually did do a lot of more than I thought I would have done, learning.
When I first got married, I didn't have a job. I actually worked outside, I was a construction worker. And then I ended up taking a job learning how to be a machinist, which in the long run, I'm thankful for because it taught me so much about what you do and how you rebuild a motor and what is the tolerance, what does it mean to keep a 2000 tolerance in bearings, and it was just an education,
Right. My going back, I just remembered a key point too is my grandfather. He was actually a welder, aluminum welder at Pratt & Whitney. Mm-hmm. So my dad got into the welding, and he picked it up from him, and then I picked it up from the ironworkers and my father. So, but my grandfather has a couple of things that he welded, and he was an excellent aluminum welder, like Eddie Flimke.
Well, Eddie, I mean, he makes
incredible.
He used to tell me it's got to look like a roll of dimes.
Yeah.
And
you surround yourself with people like that, you're going to get better and better.
When we were filming there, the show Raceworks, it was like going to school every week. Mm-hmm. You learn something every week.
Yeah, you're doing something wrong if you don't learn something.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, really, excellent.
Yeah.
I think he missed his calling. He should be a teacher.
Yeah, he's a great teacher. If you can stop, anybody can stop in there and he'll talk, and he's dead honest with everybody, and he's fair, and he's definitely a teacher for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
His father was the great Ed Flimke Sr. and won all those races, building race cars. He was doing things that no one was doing, and then Eddie took right over. And
I think it's unfair that a lot of people always try to compare him with his father.
Right.
And there were two different people.
Oh yeah, Eddie had to learn everything that he did.
Yeah.
His father had a natural ability, and Eddie had to learn. And Eddie accomplished a lot by
absolutely
an unbelievable amount for having to learn like that. A lot of people would give up.
Yeah, I mean, he's so talented when it comes to building things, I'll tell you. And now yourself, I have to say, Joe, I was there, I seen your work. You learned quite a bit too. I mean, you know how to fabricate, you know how to weld, you went through the race car with Nikki, how did that all come about with Nikki racing a car?
That started because I asked her if she wanted to race. We saw them at the Berlin Fair. They were at the Berlin Fair, and I saw them, and I got a little excited because I like racing, and there was kids in these carts and everything, and I asked her if she wanted to do it, and she said absolutely not. And so about a year later, maybe, we were talking, and we said, well, you got to do something. What do you want to do? You want to do gymnastics? Do you want to do, whatever? And she goes, well, what about those race cars? And I was like, I thought I was on Candid Camera or something. I was like, somebody's setting me up here, you know? So I said to her, I says, well, we can go check them out or whatever. And I think within a week we had a car and, you know, we had her out there, and it didn't go very well the first couple times she went out there. She just was, you could have walked around the track faster than she drove. But believe it or not, she got better and better. And then when it clicked for her, she did very well. I mean, we were second in the country, went to the Grands, our only Grands we ever went to. We podiumed 7 times, came up from the D main or E main, and she won. I mean, she was the most moving. Everybody was rooting for her at the end of the Grands, made the A main, and we got to second and kind of ran out of time to get to win it. But so that's how we got into it. The street stock thing was just the next step, you know. It was one of those things where it was the next step.
Yeah, you know, it's so tough today, I'll tell you. You know, beside the work but the money, and I mean, you have to have a family that's completely involved, you know.
Oh, you have to. If you're going to be successful, you have to do it's got to be 100% on everybody, you know. Nikki used to get mad at me. I used to say to her, she'd say, why don't you ever stick up for me when something happens out here? Why don't you stay? And I says, because I can control you. I can't control everybody else.
No, you can't.
I can tell you what you're doing wrong, but I can't tell them what they're doing wrong. And she kind of picked up on that. And where a lot of times that's working together. Yeah. That's, you know, you got to see what the people that are around you are trying to teach you and trying to, you know, and if you could do that, you can get forward. You believe it or not, you really strive.
Now,
strive ahead.
I have to say, Joe, along the way, you started collecting the 66 Chevelles. Am I thinking right?
Yeah, we had, I think, a total of 11. It's so funny now for what they're worth, because if we still had those cars, and, you know, my brother and my father were sponsored by Newington Auto Parts, and the sponsorship was any Chevelles that came in, race car related, can go, you know, they can take all the parts for it. That's how they paid for it. And so a 66 would come in, and they'd hook it up to the tow truck and bring it to the barn. So we had them all lined up in the back of the barn. And my car actually was my 66 that I have was back there. And what was funny about that one too, it's almost like destiny, because me and my cousin, we would sit in the cars and pretend we were drag racing, you know, pretend we were racing. And I used to get in my car that I have right now, I used to get in that car and wouldn't let my cousin in it. And I'd say, this is my car. This is going to be my car when I get older, you know. And when I turned 15, we dragged it from the back of the barn, and it was one of my dad was really mad about that too, because there was probably 7 67 Chevelles, and 1 or 2 of them were really nice. Like they were almost ready to go. You could put a motor in them, maybe do a little body work and go. And my 66 was like one of the worst ones up there. But I wanted a 66. I didn't want a 67. Yeah. So we were cutting parts off of and taking parts off of the good car to make my car drivable, you know. Yeah. But that taught me a lot too, because it taught me, you know, I built, that was the first car I ever built, was my you know, myself, me and my dad. And that taught me a lot too, because you know, when you have a car that's in that bad a shape, it's kind of easy to just change parts, you know. It's a little bit harder when you're, you know, cutting frames off and you know.
Oddly enough, my wife, when I got married, had the 66 Chevelle she had bought brand new. Yeah. And to this day, I keep my eye out for one, but I haven't got one yet.
Yeah, they're expensive now.
Their
prices are up. All cars are expensive now. Knowing what I know now, knowing what, you know, all those cars that we had. One of my brother's race cars that we race, it was on the track for 3 races and then got deemed illegal. And that car was a California 1966 Chevelle 396 convertible. The people were driving it. They drove it to Connecticut from California, and the motor blew. They junked the car. My brother and my father got the car, and they said, this will make a great race car because it's got a box frame under it. Well, they my dad welded a roof on the top of it, cut a roof off of one of the other cars, and we put a cage in it, and he hit the track with it, and the track said, can't have a convertible frame under the car, you know, so that car just got junked. It just got sent to the, now thinking about that car, what it's worth today, you know.
Probably, oh yeah.
It would have been worth a fortune right now.
I know, you know,
There's no rust.
There was a period, Joe, where I had fixed wrecked cars or theft cars, and I had a Yanko Deuce. Did you ever hear that?
Yeah, yep.
You know
yep,
there.
Yanko, yeah.
That car today, it got to be worth a ton of money.
Yeah, believe it or not, the green line gauges inside of my coupe are Yanko green line gauges that are
really.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a few Camaros. I had a Z28, which I'm real mad. Just thought to think about it makes me ill because I sold that car. You know,
But they weren't really worth back then. You could get another one.
It was common. Yeah. Mustangs.
Mustangs were 66, 67 Mustangs. My brother used to get them for winter crashers in the 80s, early 80s. Yeah, because there were so many of them. They had that little 6-cylinder in them, and he'd buy them up and just, I mean, probably had 4 or 5 of them. You know, the pickup trucks, the square-bodied old pickup trucks, you could buy them things for $800. You know, now they're worth $30,000-$40,000.
It's hard to believe. It really is.
Yeah, times changed, definitely. That's why I'm glad I got my car the way I was able to save that. So my coupe.
Yeah. Now, today, do you have any ambition of, restoring cars or getting something different?
Eventually, probably I'll do something else. Right now, my coupe is still in the process of being like, I keep changing it as, I keep getting better and better ideas, finding new stuff, new parts for it, and, upgrading it. But it's getting very close. I would say it's about 97% right now.
Now, that's a 33?
1933 Ford.
Like
suicide
door?
Suicide door, yep.
yeah.
Yep. 3-window too.
Wow.
So it's the rare. That's an interesting thing about them. There was only 26,000 made. You go to a car show and there's 50 of them. But people don't realize that just because it's a steel car doesn't mean that it's a real Henry steel car. Ford sold the stamps for them, and they reproduced them.
Oh,
so,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
there was only 26,000 made.
Yeah, wow.
Of the 3-window. There's a couple of 100,000 of the 5 windows. 5 windows are a lot more common, but as far as the most of them when you go to the car show are fiberglass reproductions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them. Yeah.
Fords are always my favorite thing back, the coupes. I had a 36 3-window coupe with a rumble seat. It had mechanical brakes. Joe, you could literally have to put your feet outside and drag them on the ground to stop this car.
Yeah. My car's got mechanical brakes on it too.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're not they're juice brakes, but they're not power brakes. So you gotta really step on it to get it to stop, because I want it to be a traditional hot rod period, kind of correct.
Yeah.
So they didn't have power brakes back then, but I do have juice brakes though.
I think we had a picture of your coupe too, your 33. They could show as we were talking here, which that project turned out to be an excellent car, huh, Joe?
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm super happy with the car. I mean, nothing gives out of everything that I've done. It's probably sentimental value too, because of my dad. It was my dad's car. He bought it in 1982, and I went with him. I was 13 years old, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It was a hot rod from the Berlin Turnpike, and a man named Tommy Machowski owned it, and I verified this through a few people that remembered it back in the day, and it was a hot rod on the Berlin Turnpike. Had a big block, had a Ford FE motor in it, 352 Galaxy motor in it, and well, I remember going to get it, and my dad was mad because he started partsing it out, and he had sold the doors and he sold the dashboard, and my dad was really mad that he didn't tell him first. So I was there picking it up, and I remember getting excited about it, but racing took over, and my father didn't have the time because of racing to do the car. So it kind of got pushed aside after a few years and got pushed to the side of the barn.
Thank God they saved it. That's all I got to say.
I'm finding now that I go to car shows and I've been approached by a few people who, when I talk to, I got a little story on that one we could talk about.
Yeah.
But there's people who remembered a car being in the garage. They went to try to buy it. So.
Yeah, history, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I have to admit that, going through the muscle car era, they are a favorite car.
Yeah, muscle car.
The muscle car era, the Mustangs and Camaros and Chevelles and,
Yeah. Well, that's because you were probably driven around in these old hot rods when you were.
And we lived on the highway, right?
Yeah.
McDonald's and.
Yeah.
Oh my dear.
Well, you know those muscle cars. Remember when they came out? They were hot stuff, man. They were. Them things were were fast. They had big motors in them. They were loud. They were
And oddly enough, the new car people now are coming out more and more with performance cars.
Oh yeah.
Today.
Oh yeah.
Today.
Yeah. They're
and retro look.
Oh yeah.
Retro look.
Yeah, and they're selling them pretty good. They're doing a good job of reviving it because it definitely revived the muscle car era for sure.
Absolutely.
I see it more and more. There's kids now younger that are interested in it. I'm glad because it's I think everything cycles. I think everything goes full circle.
Well, Joe, when you're having fun, time flies.
Yes.
And we come to the conclusion of the show here, and I want to thank everybody for watching. And just remember, Joe, when you're looking for a car, think about all he had to do to become what he is today, a great mechanic and good car person. That's what I like to call you, a car person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I call myself.
That's right. So we want to thank you for watching and to return next week to Racing Action Today. Thank you, Joe. This program is brought to you in part by Just Results Weight Loss Center in Berlin, Connecticut.
The Saybrook Fish House in Canton has been serving fresh seafood, chicken, and prime steaks for 40 years. Experience one of our 3 unique dining room settings, 2 with fireplaces, or relax in our cozy pub with a craft beer, wine by the glass, or specialty cocktail while enjoying a meal from our new lighter fare pub menu. Serving lunch and dinner Tuesday through Sunday. Reservations accepted for parties of 2 to 42. Gift cards always available. The Saybrook Fish House, nestled at the crossroads of routes 44, 202, and 179 in Canton.